Why is it that investors in this room should pay attention and recognize your GPS coordinates here in South Africa as the place to do business in the region? Over to you, Mr. President.
Well, thank you very much. We welcome this opportunity, and I think I speak on behalf of my brothers here. This forum has become a marketplace for attracting investment to our great continent. And obviously, as we sit here, we will talk about our own countries. But more broadly, we want to have a broader continental look because Africa's time has come.
I have always thought it was Africa's time. I think we Africans have let ourselves down, and we are now, I think, realizing that it has always been our time, and we need to seize every opportunity and be where we should be by now. The Kigali Innovation Fund, which we have created, and with the support of the African Development Bank, we have already put in money, and the government is putting money. We want private people to come and invest as well to help these startups that are growing. So you're most welcome. I reserved the beauty part for another discussion.
I think that I have a very big responsibility. I'm the sole West African here, so I have also to bat for West Africa a little bit. We have Southern Africa. But the Ghanaian perspective, I think two things. First of all, I want very much to endorse what President Ramaphosa said, the need for us to have a continental framework in the way in which we're talking about economies in West Africa, in Africa. The African Continental Free Trade Area is a major step forward for us, and we have found the overwhelming majority, I think, press unanimity on the continent.
Fellow Africans, I have the distinct honor to welcome you once more to the second edition of the Africa Investment Forum. Welcome to the biggest investment platform in our continent. Yes, welcome to the AIF Africa Investment Forum 2019. This is where we held the inaugural Africa Investment Forum from the 7th to the 9th of November 2018. And there's no doubt that that was a phenomenal success, with deals worth more than $38 billion. It was not a talk shop. The sophomore installment of the Africa Investment Forum is much bigger and much better in many respects, including that it will have a focus on investing in women.
We are greatly honored to have with us His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, His Excellency President Nana Akufo-Addo, His Excellency Paul Kagame, and the Prime Minister Agostinho do Rossario. When leaders decide, amazing things happen. Your being here with us for the Africa Investment Forum sends a powerful signal to the world that Africa means business. Almost 2 weeks ago, the Board of Governors of the African Development Bank approved a general capital increase of 125% for the bank. This increased the capital of the bank up by $115 billion, from $93 billion to $208 billion. This is the highest capital increase in the history of the bank since its establishment in 1964. Your Excellencies, your very strong support as heads of state, for ministers of finance, governors, and executive directors of the bank from all our 80 shareholder countries made this possible, and I'd like to say thank you and thank you.
Why Africa? What do we mean? What do we present?
You're exactly right. I flew in from Vietnam yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what's happening. The transformation is taking place across Africa. As we were talking beforehand, I've spent 19 years working in Africa. I used to run our Africa program before being appointed to lead the U.S. Trade Development Agency. And it's the dynamism that's taking place by developers across the continent and investors that are wanting to find projects that are bankable. And that's where USTDA steps in.
Where are we now in terms of congressional support, essentially? Is Africa on the map? Is it solid? And what other areas beyond power are you looking to exploit?
Africa is on the map. I look at USTDA, we have a more diverse, a bigger program budget than we've ever had. The president just last year signed into law the Development Finance Corporation that's doubled the size of the Development Finance Institution in the United States. The U.S. Export-Import Bank is up and operational again. These are all tools designed to support U.S. investment into Africa, U.S. exports, U.S. engagement across the continent.
When I came in, President Adesina introduced me to a number of heads of these sovereign wealth funds, these various development finance institutions and banks. And as I shook their hands, I told them that I could feel money flowing from their hands to my hands. And I said that I'm going to go for a medical checkup after this to see whether it has flown into my bloodstream as well and into the bloodstream of our continent. Last year, there were quite a number of investors who came from 53 countries. The forum was instrumental in mobilizing funding for initiatives as diverse and as potentially impactful as the Accra SkyTrain, the Kigali Innovation City, the first road rail bridge project linking Kinshasa and Brazzaville, and the $320 million Africa Infrastructure Investment Fund. This is an indication of the breadth of investment opportunities that do exist in our continent. Political stability in many African countries has enabled us to industrialize as well as to pursue development policies that have brought millions of people out of abject poverty. We want to produce our own goods for our own domestic markets and for export. We want to be able to stitch, to stamp, and to chisel the words proudly made in Rwanda, proudly made in Ghana, proudly made in Mozambique, proudly made in Togo, and proudly made in South Africa. Garments, mobile phones, computers, and cars, you name it, we want it to be made here in this beautiful continent of Africa.
How are you seeing the construction sector in East Africa right now?
It's a vibrant sector. It's been a quiet couple of years in Tanzania, but as of second quarter 2019, we've seen a lot more projects come into the market. Tanzania is becoming very busy once again, a lot of new industries coming in. Kenya and Uganda have been busy for the last 4 or 5 years. They continue to be so. Very strong economies, lots of new projects coming in, industrial work, infrastructure, civil works. So it's a busy time.
Africa is a continent that has shaken off its troubled past. It is a place that has known deprivation and turmoil for far too long. But it is also a continent of resilience. It is also a continent of people who are courageous. It is also a continent of people who are innovators. It is also a continent of people who are determined to succeed and to prosper. As the investor community, your presence here shows your unwavering will to help us and to support us to succeed.
What are the greatest hurdles you're facing in construction right now in East Africa?
The single biggest hurdle would be that of unfair competition. State-owned Chinese companies are impossible for privately owned African businesses to compete with. And that is an agenda that is very important to me personally and to the construction sector in general in East Africa. So once again, the ADB and similar institutions are critical in helping us overcome that by them enabling local businesses such as ours.
What an incredible 12 months it's been. You guys have been so busy at work. You've put a lot of us here in this room to shame, at least me. Ashish, I want to start with you because we've been in contact quite a bit about your project. And, making the announcement on stage last year and being able to deliver on it. In fact, you're in full production, things are up and running, lots of women working for you, in fact, taking over your life, which is great. Tell me about how you did it.
Last year at the Africa Investment Forum 2018, we announced our intent to put up 2 smartphone manufacturing plants, which are going to manufacture high quality but affordable smartphones in Africa for the first time. It's something that's never been done on the continent, and it's something that can create a lot of positive social impact, that if our people have high quality and affordable smartphones, it can truly be life-changing. So we announced it last year, and on October 7th, His Excellency President Paul Kagame opened the factory in Mara Phones, Rwanda, in Kigali. And on October 17th, President Ramaphosa opened Mara Phones South Africa in Durban. So we now have almost over 400 to 450 employees. 60% are women, which is the highest gender ratio anywhere in the world.
Please let's get a round of applause for that. This is why the phones will never break, right?
This is why our quality is better than everybody else's.
So this time last year, we were running a boardroom. We'd come to the conference, Paulo and I, to present to a room full of investors. At the time, the only investor that had committed fully to supporting us was the African Development Bank, anchoring us. And they provided us the platform then to present to a number of investors. And when we came that time, we had about 10% of funds raised, and now to this week, we are closing on over 70% of the funds that we were looking for, so to reach our target of 100 million. If all the women, if all the people, all the assets in the country, in the economy, globally, if they are utilized, we look at global GDP rising by over 26%. And I just want you to picture for a moment the lineup at the World Cup rugby recently. If half of that rugby team, South African rugby team, was not on the field, there's no way they would have won. And so women have been an underutilized asset on this continent. And our fund, the Alethi IDF Fund, is proactively seeking out these entrepreneurs to build scalable businesses for international and intra-Africa trade.
Pay close attention to sports because it's going someplace. When I look at America and I look at the Western world and I look at the ecosystem of sports, there's no way, with all the talent we have on this continent, there's no way that we should not have everything that's going on there here. And that means the NBA, the Premiership. I see millions and millions of Arsenal fans, Manchester United fans, people everywhere. We should be supporting teams here in Africa, and that should be our vision.
I always think about the woman that is in the rural areas, that is bearing the brunt of raising children, that isn't able to experience true economic prosperity because of her reality. How do we get her involved in this conversation and keep her in mind? And of course, President Ramaphosa also alluded to it. How do we keep her in mind as we engage in these conversations in the boardroom? Can we change her life and her reality?
Absolutely. So when I spoke about how we think about the value chain of businesses, we think about the value chain and women's participation both as producers and as consumers. When I think about producers in the agribusiness world, if you look at the small-scale farmers, they are the women that you're talking about. Yeah. And our role is, if we can fund the businesses that empower these women to be able to be the producers at their full potential, then we're impacting on them.
When we talk about the gender ratio, the highest women participation in any smartphone manufacturer globally is 28%. When we tried to commit saying we're going to do 50% plus and then achieving the 60%, and it actually shows these women are not just, they're trained engineers, electrical engineers, etc. So the skills are out there. It's a mindset shift that we need to kind of push. To your point about the strategy and the vision, I think, look, if being a made in Africa phone, obviously everybody initially has a hint of hesitation, saying, where did we cut corners? And that's the best part. We have not compromised on quality at all. We've got an extremely high quality smartphone, which is at a very affordable price.
Sports has always been put on the side, okay? If you bring somebody that doesn't know anything about sports, it's hurting the youth of Africa because we need to progress. So bring an expert of sports, to be the Minister of Sports, or let that person hire an expert to advise him. It's or her. It's very, very important for us. We're not like finance or some of the other things, like where you can bring sports needs experts, and we need that in. Please, I'm begging all the presidents. I'm appealing here. Please put experts in sports. Don't do any cabinet reshuffles anymore in sports. Okay? Please.
Much action is happening here at the Sandton Convention Center, where the Africa Investment Forum is taking place. I mean, it's bringing together, and it has brought together, heads of state from all over the continent, and of course investors from the continent as well, and all over the world.
The total value of transactions that we are going to be having discussed in these boardrooms is $67 billion US. Remember last year, going into the boardrooms, we have $43 billion being discussed. This year, we have $67 billion being discussed in the boardrooms across 59 transactions.
Some of the countries cannot actually survive on their own if you want to thrive. Let me put it that way. Unless we have an integrated continent where we are able to form a common platform for economic and investment relationship, Africa will continue to be underdeveloped.
When you see the number of people that are coming to Africa Investment Forum, not only to look for opportunities, but actually to transact opportunities, this is part of the changing narrative.
Since we last met a year ago, between then and now, we have signed partnership agreements between ourselves to strengthen our own firepower, because sometimes what you find is that you have limits in terms of how much you can put in a particular deal. But if you have smart partnerships, you can scale up collectively. So for instance, with the African Development Bank, we've signed a risk participation agreement to the tune of about $300 million, which will allow us to move speedily into deals and have partners coming into deals alongside us.
EIB has made a record year in 2018 in Africa. We have invested 3.3 billion euros. We had never done that before. And it has been a bit more than 50% supporting the private sector. So we were used to be more active in the public sector, and actually we are now much more active in developing projects for the private sector.
This forum is a very important forum. We were last year a founding partner of the IF. And actually this year we've come with much more loan officers than last year, because we think this is a great opportunity to meet with African entrepreneurs and to meet with people who have great ideas, good projects that we can then continue to look at and finance.
Of course, the continent is watching closely your relationship and your future relationship with the United Kingdom, and it's the question around how does that relationship change or impact in any way some of the projects that you are looking to finance here in Africa?
Well, what will change is that if the UK leaves the European Union, then it leaves the European Investment Bank, because the condition to be a member of the EIB is to be a member of the European Union. What will not change is that the UK will remain, if they leave the European Union, will remain a key partner for development, and a key partner for us in financing projects, especially in Africa.
What are some of the quick wins you would like from a conference like this?
Well, you see, as I said again, because you have everybody here, you have the investors, you have the promoters, business promoters, and then you have, DFIs and also, the leaders, so it makes it much easier. And it also gives us the opportunity to discuss other issues,
Infrastructure is the biggest problem of most African cities. As you know, they can't cope. The major African cities can't cope. Inadequate infrastructure, increasing levels of informalization, access to housing, big issues, water, sanitation, electricity. So it is a conversation that I have started with President Adesina on behalf of the Forum for African Metropolis, which I convene as well. And in Durban, we will have a side session with some of the governors and the mayors of that. And then we're going to come back to the AFDB to look at how, as we deal with this in promoting investment, we can bring in the issue of sustainable and livable cities.
The piloting site for the e-visa is Kenya. In November. That is exciting. So there is a focus as well on the African continent, because there's been an outcry that we don't seem to be paying attention on the African continent. We are paying attention because when we look at our statistics as tourism, major part of our tourist arrivals from anywhere, it's the continent. So the numbers that we have, that we see, are driven by the continent visitors to the country for various reasons. We think there's still a lot of opportunities as we unlock, working closely with Home Affairs. We will not achieve everything overnight. As the department, we would want to see the borders opened, obviously, from our side as the Department of Tourism. But it's not feasible, it's not possible, and we understand some of the concerns the colleagues have in the security class, and that's why we're working together with them to balance.
Tell us what the DBSA has in terms of its pipeline and the projects that it's looking to fund to address this.
Yeah. So, I mean, for us, as you know, we operate in South Africa as well as outside SA. Our project pipeline is quite rich in South Africa as well. If you think about the municipality, that's our mainstay as a bank. Almost 50% of our book is with the municipalities, and we'll continue to focus on that. Right now, for the purposes of this forum, we are also bringing new projects from the municipalities, more the water reuse, on the sustainability aspect of it. But again, in terms of the financing gap, honestly, I do believe there's a lot of money out there.
Our purpose is to encourage collaboration between family business in the Middle East. As you know, in the GCC and all these countries, family business is dominant. In Africa, it's still fragmented. In the top 100 companies in the Middle East, 80% is family business. In the top 100 companies in Africa, only 20% is family business. So this is an opportunity here of collaboration, and this is the purpose of this meeting. Growth in Africa is the highest growth in the world. Population, the highest growth. So that means, of course, we need infrastructure, but we need more technology, we need more jobs. The other thing is, the danger is that there is 1 billion people living in slums. I just give you few figures, how technology can help fighting poverty. 40% of food, stable food, is lost before they reach the market. This is impressive. 40%. How many people you can feed with 40%? And if we use a new technology, and I think some people are promoting that here in this same floor, 470 million small farmers in Africa will be in better shape.
What we are doing is now trying to look at those countries with big population, because we are in the consumer food, and we are looking to expand further in other countries in Africa.
There is 2 points for me which is important. One is law and order. It's very important is law and order, because if I have a problem, there will be a justice system that will be fair for everybody and not just only fair for the investor. And the other thing is the banks. The banks are only focusing on big projects and not focusing on small projects.
If you don't have the right connections in our region, you will most of the time get nowhere. So what we wanted to do is share these connections with
leverage on network.
Yeah, all these young people. But so it was we came up with an idea that was mostly like a venture capital, but a company of that nature still doesn't exist in Sudan. So it was very difficult for us to register the company and deal with the taxation problems. Will we be able to get taxed once instead of twice, and so on? But we ended up registering the company, but the difference between our company, which is called Anafi, by the way, Anafi Capital, and a normal venture capital is the fact that we want to be there for these people until the very end.
Investors tend to prefer to invest in large companies because they have a lower risk of default. They do usually have clearer financial statements, while small and medium enterprises are riskier from the lender's perspective. And this is because they lack sustainability, they lack leadership and governance, they lack understanding of the business generally. And part of the problem is as well the lack of infrastructure, the lack of information infrastructure.